Coming up.
So today we wanted to actually kind of start off with a little bit of frequently asked questions that we get from patients as well. And so we've come up with a handful. We're just going to go through each of them and talk about our different perspectives and opinions on them. Obviously, you know, we're not the end all be all. We love everybody to work with us and want to work with us and work with our practices. But we know that's not always feasible for everybody. We know that people live in different places. So we're going to try and be as neutral as possible. We're going to try and just answer these questions as like pragmatically as we can. So Kimi, what do you think we should tackle first?
All right. So today's episode is going to be about like how to pick your myofunctional therapist.
If we're going to talk about licensure and like scope of practice and like really get into the nitty gritty of it, according to everybody's scopes of practices, according to like the like governing bodies, people who are able to provide myofunctional therapy would be speech language pathologists, we call them SLPs, registered dental hygienists, we call them RDHs, technically dentists, physical therapists, occupational therapists can get special permission from their state board if they write in for that. So that would be a, you know, something to double check on. I know a couple different occupational therapists who have done that. So if it's a dental assistant, if it's a front office person, if it's somebody's office manager, if it's the doctor's wife, if it's, you know, anybody like that, that is technically practicing outside of their scope, that's not.
We have a special offer for our Munch Bunch listeners. To book a virtual consult with Megan, she's offering a discount of $25 off. Just email her Megan at nwmyofunctionaltherapy.com or through her website www.orofacial-myology.com. To book a virtual consult with Kimi for the $25 off, email her mouthmusclememory@outlook.com or through the website www.mouthmusclememory.com. Now on to the episode.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Munch Bunch Myo podcast. I'm Megan Vanoy here with my co-host, Kimi Nishimoto. We've got lots of things to talk with you guys about today. If you caught us on Instagram, you might have noticed that Kimi was just here visiting in Portland, and it was the best time. We got to go see the Zac Brown Band concert, thanks to our wonderful podcast host, guitarist extraordinaire of Zac Brown Band, Coy Bowles. So if you haven't, we went nuts, you guys. We totally fangirled. We fangirled so hard. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to that episode, watch that episode, however you guys stream your podcast, like go back and look at that because Coy was truly amazing. And Kimi and I spent a lot of time talking about the pod and having lots of fun together. I took them to many good Portland food locations. We ate good, you guys. We ate good. Kimi got lots of snuggles from Isabel. She warmed up so fast. But we also spent a lot of time talking about the podcast and you guys, and, you know, who do we talk to every day, right? Like, who's our audience? Who are we trying to help, right? We obviously, I hope you guys know at this point, like we're here for both patients or prospective patients, and we're here for other clinicians to, you know, answer questions. And we came up with a couple different ideas, and that's why you guys get to just see our fresh faces today. One of the big things, and actually this episode is not about this, but Kimi and I talked about doing maybe a monthly Q&A with you guys, whether it's patients or other therapists who listen to us. So if you guys have questions that you want to know answers to, that you're like, man, I wish they would have covered this topic, or man, I really want to know more about this, email us, DM us, email us, smoke signals, carrier pigeons, whatever your form of getting a message to us. You can DM us at the Munch Bunch Myo podcast. You can email either one of us, Megan at northwestmyofunctionaltherapy.com. Kimi's at mouthmusclememory@outlook.com. You can slide into our DMs all you want. But we want to answer your questions. We know what we like to talk about, but we also want to know what you guys want us to talk about. And so we're going to kind of open up that monthly Q&A for you guys, because we have, Kimi, you've had a few messages lately, right?
Yes. And if you guys want to write it in like a letter, like Dear Abby style, we thought that would be a fun way of doing it. So you can always just slide into our DMs, ask us a question, and then we can always like talk to you more about that.
Yes. Or if you want to make it official as an advice column, Dear Nasal Breathers.
I think we decided we wanted to be Mimi. Megan and Kimi.
Dear Mimi.
Dear Mimi.
Sound like so feel grandma. Free. We does a cool grandma though, right? So today we wanted to actually kind of start off with a little bit of frequently asked questions that we get from patients as well. And so we've come up with a handful. We're just going to go through each of them and talk about our different perspectives and opinions on them. Obviously, we're not the end all be all. We love everybody to work with us and want to work with us and work with our practices. But we know that's not always feasible for everybody. We know that people live in different places. So we're going to try and be as neutral as possible. We're going to try and just answer these questions as like pragmatically as we can. So Kimi, what do you think we should tackle first?
All right. So today's episode is going to be about like how to pick your myofunctional therapist.
Yeah.
So question number 1, what training is important? And the big one that comes up is, do I have to see an SLP or can I see an RDH, which is a dental hygienist? And the fact is, you can see either one, whatever is better for you. Just making sure that you kind of talk to them and grill them that they are well trained in myofunctional therapy, because most hygienists do not know what this is or they've just done a little bit of training. Same with SLPs. Again, they're not trained in school. So all this stuff is additional postgraduate training that they did on their own time. So that's a big one. And then controversial topic right now. We don't advocate that you use a dental assistant.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about that for a sec. So if we're going to talk about licensure and like scope of practice and like really get into the nitty gritty of it, according to everybody's scopes of practices, according to like the like governing bodies, people who are able to provide myofunctional therapy would be speech language pathologists, we call them SLPs, registered dental hygienists, we call them RDHs, technically dentists, physical therapists. Occupational therapists can get special permission from their state board if they write in for that. So that would be something to double check on. I know a couple different occupational therapists who have done that. So if it's a dental assistant, if it's a front office person, if it's somebody's office manager, if it's the doctor's wife, if it's, anybody like that is technically practicing outside of their scope, that's not, and to be honest with you guys, that does kind of cheapen our field a little bit, right? Like we did go to school for that extra education. And then we came out with the degrees that we all came out with. And then we have pursued further education to learn more and to specialize. We understand that there is, what's the word I'm looking? There's a convenience to having other people trained, and whether or not they're, supposed to or not, and different organizations, have different options for letting other team members come on board. And it's it's not right. I mean, I'm just gonna be blunt about that one. It's important that we all practice kind of within the scope that we are, trained in. And so beyond that, what trainings matter? There's a lot of trainings out there, right? There's a lot of introductory courses. There's a lot of different, groups out there who are training. And is one better than the other? Not necessarily. I would look at organizations that have been around for a long time who have their introductory training programs. I would look at some of those bigger groups. I would also look at some of those groups who actually work with other people, right? So it's not just one solo person, who's doing all the training, but they actually bring in other professionals to work with them. I would say I would want to work with somebody who is practicing what they preach, and who is actually practicing and seeing patients and is still doing clinical care. I think that's really, really important, because I don't think that working with somebody who just teaches and doesn't actually do any of the clinical work can really speak to what's going on currently with patients. So I think that is important as well. Kimi, what are some other thoughts on that?
I agree. And like a lot of times you'll see like, oh, find someone who's like a certified or a facial myologist or a QOM.
Oh, yeah.
You can go on to get those higher levels, but I don't have those, but I feel like I'm very highly educated and I'm really good at helping patients because I have a very broad base of knowledge and I've delved into lots of different areas. So I wouldn't say like they absolutely have to have that.
No, certifications are also kind of a weird spot because, different organizations offer different certifications when you finish their program. And that's great. I think there's a lot to be said about having to present cases and to apply your knowledge. So with certifications, so many different organizations offer certification at the end of their training course. I think that can be really great, to be able to go through your cases, have feedback, really apply the knowledge that you learned. But having different certifications does not qualify you above one therapist or another. So it just means that you took the course and you went through kind of that extra, finish line process. But the other thing about certifications is only each individual organization recognizes that certification. So if you got a certification from, Joe's myofunctional therapy program, and then you came over to, Kimi's myofunctional therapy program, and you'll say, hey, well, I'm certified in Joe's over here. The Kimi myofunctional therapy certification programs would be like, well, we don't care about that. We only care about Kimi's certification program, right? And so that, again, doesn't really help all the different organizations mesh and meld, because then they'll say, well, we don't recognize that. We only recognize if you've come from these people, right? And again, that just is another barrier. My question to my myofunctional therapist would be, hey, how long have you been doing this? Maybe even how many patients have you seen? Sometimes that's not even a great number question, because you could have seen 500 patients, but if you never continued your education, or you never treated patients individually and you just ran them through all the different exercises, right? Did we achieve our goals, right? And so I do think that it's really important to talk to your myofunctional therapist, not so much about their training, but, I think you should make sure they're trained. But, okay. And, how long do you work with patients? What kind of style do you like to follow? Where can you help me find the other providers that I'm supposed to be working with? Are you available during the times that I need appointments?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that goes into a little bit of as far as availability, should I see someone in person or virtual? And you just have to figure out what's best for your life and your situation and your reality, right?
Yeah.
Some people are so busy that I've had clients that, were running companies and they oversaw like thousands of people at work. So he would do his exercises while he drove to work, and we would do sessions like at his lunchtime because that was the only times that he had.
Right.
So you just have to see what works for you.
Right.
I would want him like at least one time a day to do his exercises in front of the camera or in front of a mirror. But a lot of times he would do stuff while he was driving. He was so funny too. He was like, Kimi, I didn't use the elastic today, but I just like put my tongue there. Is it okay that I did that? And I'm like, that's even better. That's the whole goal.
Right. Could you do that all the time? That would be
Yeah.
great. I mean, in person, virtual, here's the thing is like, as we have a license to scale your teeth, but we don't have a license to like touch and move your face. Right. And so what I tell patients is if we see you virtually, and I had an in-person practice for about 2.5, 3 years, and I transitioned fully online during that time. So I've done both. And I didn't touch people in person. I tell we bring the gym to you, right? We give you your tools, we give you everything you need. If you have good internet, you have good lighting, we can absolutely see you virtually. But if you have like all your kids running around the background, you've got spotty internet, your time for yourself is actually going and driving somewhere and being like, okay, I can get rid of all these distractions and really just focus in, right? Or on the opposite, right? Like my life is so crazy. Can I see you like when my kids are napping? Absolutely, right? Like, that having the virtual has a little more freedom and flexibility. But there's also something to be said about seeing somebody in person and not being distracted by other things going on. And that's okay too. So, anybody who says one is better than the other, I don't think that's totally fair. Obviously, Kimi and I prefer virtual therapy because that's what we do, right? And we're happy to see you. We're happy to work with you. But we also know, sometimes there's distractions in your house. Let's say I'm seeing a 5-year-old and they see all my Legos in the background, right? Like they want to talk about the Legos, right? They don't want to do therapy. But, then I have them show me their Legos and we move on. But you have to know what works best for you. You have to know what works best for your learning style, for your family, and for your situation.
All right. The next one would be talking about like, does your therapist work on compensations? Which another way of thinking about that is exercises, but you're cheating. It's like doing the easy squats versus squats with good technique, or doing dead weights. You can do them one way and it'll make you really strong and tough. And if you do it the wrong way, you hurt your back.
Hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. So compensation is really important. And that's where like having a skilled therapist who can see what you're doing, but is quote cheating, that is very, very important, because sometimes people will complain that they're getting more tension or more pain in their jaw or their neck. And if that's happening, it's because you're compensating with other muscles. Other things are getting tugged in a way that's not natural.
Yeah. And we see this a lot in some of these public groups of like, since I've been doing my exercises, things hurt more. Is anybody getting worse? Like that should not be happening. Just straight up, that should not be happening. So what your therapist should be able to do is recognize that and be like, okay, pain is not our goal. Fatigue, tired, a little bit maybe of a struggle and a hard exercise. Okay. But pain is never what we're going for. When we're in pain, our body goes, right? And it locks up. It doesn't like push through, right? It protects itself. And our job is to create these new neuromuscular patterns. So pain is like counterintuitive, contraindicated for what we're trying to do for you. And so being able to be like, oh, well, you might be in pain because you're doing this weird thing with your jaw, or because you're really trying too hard from here. I had a patient who was she's like, I just feel like the back of my tongue needs to be up more, but now I'm having these like issues, like in my esophagus, it hurts when I swallow. And I'm like, I think you're doing it too hard. Right. And we slow it down, right? It's not no pain, no gain. It's, we do not want pain. And so being able to recognize those, identify those, address those compensations, figure out why, stepping things back, figuring out if you you know, doing an exercise in a big smile versus a relaxed face. Like some of those nuances come from having experience and also come from treating the person individually themselves versus, well, this is how I do it. This is how you're supposed to do the exercise.
And that's where my training with face yoga has helped too, because I can teach someone how to smile with the correct muscles of their face versus pulling their neck. Because a lot of patients were taught to smile during exercises. But they're like, my neck hurts and the back of my head hurts when I do my exercises. Like they're smiling out and down, bulging the neck. They're getting neck tension during it versus smiling up towards the eyes, showing top teeth. That's a very, very important one. But some people can't do that. So then we can always like baby step it
back,
scale it back, work on the smile. So then once we get that, then you're not activating those other muscles. So compensations.
Checking your posture, right? Like zoom neck, compensations, good posture, right? Some of those basic things, you got to look what the rest of your body's doing too.
Also another wee controversial opinion, mewing.
Oh, don't do it.
Mewing. Yeah. A mewing YouTuber is not a myofunctional therapist.
How dare you?
Yeah. A lot of people get into that because they're like, oh, I can do this on my own and it's free. Megan, how many people have you seen that have come to you for consults because they're like, my neck hurts and I'm getting so much headache since I started mewing?
I started mewing and I think I made things worse. I'm probably underestimating, but at least 100. Like I'm not even, at least.
And the reason why, and for those who don't know, mewing is where the basics are good, like your nose breathing and your tongue is up, but you're encouraged to kind of
power through,
push and force the back of your tongue up to the roof. I had one kid that was into it from YouTube and TikTok and stuff, and he's like, I've been getting so much headaches. I feel like my head is going to explode since I started mewing. But he was pushing the absolute heck out of his palate. Yeah. Guess what, guys? Your palate is attached to the rest of your head. So I'm like, stop doing that. Stop pushing so hard.
Like we just need you to scale it back by like 100. We understand. And, I think that speaks to like, we understand that there's budgets. Okay. And that's fair. And affordability is something we can also talk about as we go through this series. I think we save that for a different episode because I think that's a long topic. There are so many people out there, ourselves included, who can figure out payment plans for you, who can figure out other options for you to make it affordable. And so that being a barrier, I don't think is really a fair comment to make at this point because there are a lot of options. You just have to find that out. I keep my exam costs low. I know it's one of the lowest costs around, even though I've been doing this for a really long time and I've seen, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of patients and they evaluate it even more. But I don't increase my exam costs because I don't want that to be a barrier for you to know what you need. And I know Kimi's the same way, right? Like we don't want to price you out in our exams. So then you can't even do anything else. Like you're looking for answers, you're looking for help. And if we price you out, then you're not even going to know what you need.
Very good point. Very good point.
We want to introduce the Spot for Tots course, a parent's guide for toddlers ages 2 to 5 for mini myo. We have Megan and Kimi going over nasal hygiene, myofunctional exercises, breathing exercises, tongue-tie healing protocols, and then we have Jenny June going over sleep hygiene and Kelsey Baker going over feeding therapy and body work. The course is $297 and the link will be in the description.
All right. Do we want to save some of these for another day or do we want to do one more?
Let's talk let's talk a little bit about, when we were talking about finding the right fit, we talked about in-person versus virtual, but I also think personality is something to consider. Obviously Kimi and I have the best personalities out there. We are co-Miss Congenialities. Sandra Bullock taught us everything that we need to know about that. But In all seriousness, you have to go with somebody that you connect with, somebody that you feel like you can trust, somebody you feel like is not going to give you the runaround, somebody you feel like actually cares about you, and not just the number of patients. And I think somebody who's upfront and honest about what they do and what their practice does. Are they the main practitioner? Do they have a team? Do they still work with patients, or are they just kind of the face of the group? Like, what is, their website should show what they do, who's on their team, credit where credit is due, I think is really, really important. I don't think people should be bamboozled because they think they're going to this person's practice and they're like, okay, but then I've never met this person. Like, why? How come I don't know who this person is? Why are you giving me an intern? Why are you giving me, somebody who's never seen patients before? Why, like, well, I want to talk to the person who owns the place or who's around or who, there's front office staff. We have a patient care coordinator who is beyond amazing. And I have a team, and my team is shown, and Kimi, I know you work solo right now, but you've also been a part of my team. And
Yep, I used to work under Megan, and she was like, she would send me people, I would do their therapy, and it was a nice setup. And then, like at the beginning, when I was still wanting to get my feet wet and kind of get a feel for things, so that was a really good experience from my end as like a beginning therapist.
Yeah, and I was really honest with people. I'm like, hey, I've got Kimi, I've got myself, I've got Kimi. Kimi's amazing. She's just starting out, but I trust her. I've worked with her. And I showcased that. And I think that's really important to know who you're working with. I think it's really important to know that you can trust people, and that they're going to email you back, that they're going to, they're not too busy for their people and for their patients. I think is really important, because this is collaborative, right? And we are working with people. And like when you sign up with a doctor or with a therapist or with whoever, there's expectations around that.
Yeah, and I think you also have to think, like, are you more someone who wants warm fuzzies, or do you want someone who's going to be like very quick and maybe a little blunt, but maybe you like that, you just want someone who gets like it done fast and dirty? Or do you want someone who's going to spend a little bit of time with you that you feel comfortable with? Because let's be honest, guys, you're sharing really personal stuff. You're talking about how you're eating. You're talking about your digestive system and how bloated and gassy you are, or what your bowels are like, or your headaches, your pain, your sleep. Like, it's kind of an intimate thing. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable with your person.
Yeah. Or even some people share like intimacy stuff, right? Like, I always tell patients, I'm like, look, you don't get in trouble with me. That's not my job. Like, if you have a rough week and you don't get your practice in, I see patients on a 2-week basis. I think Kimi does too, because, I like to kind of extend grace around practicing. And I know not every week is perfect. And so I kind of space things out. I have found that over the years, I have less people kind of come back with any sort of like, what's the word I'm looking for, Kimi? Regression, relapse, because we do kind of take our sweet time a little bit. But, I don't ever want a patient to feel ashamed when they come see me because they didn't get to their exercises this week because they were sick, or because like they're back in school and like they're really struggling, or, they've had 4 other kids. And, I just had a patient recently, she had her baby a little bit early, and she was like, hey, do you think we could push off? Because I just had my baby. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. And I'm not going to charge you because you were literally delivering a baby last night and couldn't message me that you couldn't make it today. Right. So I think, like, and I can be blunt, like that's something I can do. Or, I can also, and I know Kimi's really good at this too, like extend that like warmth and extend that like understanding and grace. Yes, our time is important, and I respect people who also respect my time, but I also understand life happens and things come up, and things have come up on my end, especially since having Isabel, right? And so being able to find somebody that you connect with, somebody that you feel is trustworthy, somebody that you can really I guess connect with on that deeper level, and know that they're going to want what's best for you and not necessarily what's best for them and their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good points. Good points. Let's see. Should we save some for the future?
Yeah, and I'd like to know too from you guys, like from your listeners, if you have more questions about this or you want us to talk more about some of this stuff. Like, we talked about which trainings matter and certifications, in person versus virtual, being able to recognize compensations. And as the field moves forward, keeping up with what the latest and greatest is, right? Like, I think that's really important as well when we were talking about that compensation piece, right? And then as well as, finding a therapist whose personality you connect with, somebody you can have fun with, somebody that you can know you come to them with your pains and your aches and your worries. And our goal is to help you through that and not judge you through that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll continue this series because we also want to talk to you guys about like different costs and sessions and goals. We want to talk, more about what you want to know when it comes to trying to pick the right therapist as well. So, of course, we already talked about it. Slide into our DMs, email us, contact us, whichever way you feel comfortable. We would love to answer your questions. And even if you're a therapist who have questions as well, we can do a whole separate Q&A session about therapists with questions about how to practice myofunctional therapy. We're happy to create that series for you guys too. So, Kimi, where can they find us?
At the Munch Bunch Maya podcast on YouTube, on Instagram, the Munch Bunch podcast, for Megan at NWMFT, for Kimi at Mouth Muscle Memory. And don't forget to write us your Dear Mimi advice column questions.
Or if you guys have a better name for us, we're open to that. We'll create a poll or something.
Second option was Dear Kegan.
Kegan. That sounds a little frat boy-y though, so I don't know about that one. Mimi sounds like a nice comforting grandma who like gives you all their best advice. So
yeah, I think we'll stick with Mimi.
Unless you guys want to know advice about how to do keg stands, then let Kegan know. All right, you guys, well, we're going to continue this series. One of the things that we're also doing is we are going to start releasing our episodes pretty consistently on Mondays. So those of you who are commuters have the week to listen to it before we get you something more the following week. So keep an eye out for Mondays, Monday. And we will get new episodes out to you guys weekly. And we will plan to see you guys next Monday.
Yeah. We should call it the Monday Munchies.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I think that we're going to create a Facebook community and we're just going to start calling you guys the Munchies. So the Munchie groupies. So we'll come up with a cool name. We'll come up with a cooler name for our followers, unless you guys love that. So
I don't know. We get snacks, so Munchies works.
I know, right? All right, you guys. Well, thank you as always for listening. Thank you for supporting us. We know that there are other podcasts out there you could be listening to, and you always make time and room for us. And we just want to express our gratitude for that as we continue to grow and bring you just more and more information, all things airway, holistic health, whatever you guys want, we're going to bring it to you. All right. Bye, everybody.